You've got yourself a DSLR or mirrorless camera and you're trying to work out what lens is going to be best for you. Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you about the lenses. First things first, you've got two main categories of lenses. You've got primes and you've got zooms. Zoom lenses allow you to zoom in and zoom out on a subject. They're actually really versatile in terms of general use. They do tend to have a variable aperture when it comes to zooming in and zooming out of your subject. Now, this isn't necessarily ideal for low light situations, but they're never really going to be as sharp as prime lenses. When you initially start off doing photography, you may be looking at an APS-C camera, in which you'll have a kit lens on there. Now, the kit lens is going to give you the first stage to just really being able to take photography, give you the broadest range possible for the most part, but also kind of encourage you to look at other lenses a little bit later on. For example, if you want to go wider, a 10-18 is actually a really good place for you to actually move to and get a lens that is going to give you a new perspective on what you're actually taking photos of. Past that, then there's usually around a 70 to 300mm focal length that you look at. These lenses can actually be reasonably quite cheap, and they give you the ability to shoot things like wildlife a lot easier, sports, cars, everything kind of like at a distance is kind of what you're looking at when you're using a longer focal length. When it comes to picking your focal length, you really need to understand kind of what you're shooting. And when you're going from a basic setup to something a little bit more complicated, you're going to be needing to look at constant aperture zoom lenses. These are usually around an f2.8. They do sometimes vary under or vary over. f2.8 lenses are kind of a really good goal to have for general zooms, especially in the APS-C market. They are a little bit more expensive, but with that you get better low light performance as well as much sharper and generally lower depth images as well, which is what you may be looking for out of your camera. When it comes to using a full frame camera, you are looking at the 2470, the 70-200, and the 1635. Those are the focal lengths that kind of cover everything from a wide angle to a decent telephoto and allow you to get some cool shots. Still really good, and it's called the Holy Trinity setup because it gives you everything you really need. Other lenses outside of that are you were looking for doing your sports, your wildlife, and things at longer focal length. As standard, these generally exist between a 150 and 600mm focal length, and they offer you a very sharp image at a really long distance for you to be able to capture subjects that are further away. Let's get into my favorite, which is primes. Prime lenses are a single focal length. There is no zoom there, but what you get out of that is actually a wider aperture. With a wider aperture, you're going to actually get better low light performance and a lower depth of field. These lenses are generally favored by people that want to be shooting portraits, things with a lower depth of field. But the other side with primes is that they are generally sharper. It's just they don't encompass as many focal ranges, so if you're trying to keep your kit small and compact, prime lenses are not the best way to go. In fact, they are probably the more expensive option. They tend to start at f1.2 for the really nice ones, all the way to f5.6 for like a really good telephoto prime. And like I said, when it comes to primes, they are ultimately going to be sharper because they're not trying to be sharp throughout a long range of different focal lengths. They are sharp at that focal range, and they're always going to be super sharp at that. Prime lenses in general go along this kind of pattern, usually 14, 20, 24, 35, 50, 85, 105. There's a lot of primes. When you get into shooting photography more and more, you may find yourself favoriting a particular focal length, in which write that focal length down, because you could look to get yourself a nice little prime that will start you off there. Usually people's first prime is the 50mm f1.8. And it was mine personally. I had a plastic fantastic Canon that I bought for £90 back in the day, and it's one of my favourite lenses that I've ever owned, in fact. And the 50mm is actually perfect for your portrait photography there as well, giving you a nice low depth of field and a much different style to your images. Might make this into 2 videos, I don't know, because could do one on primes, one on zooms, might be a little bit simpler. Anyway, if you enjoyed that video, Please like, follow and subscribe if you want to see more. Of course, this is a lesson format in terms of a series, so click right up here to go onto the playlist for the basics in photography. And yeah, exciting. The next video we're going to be talking about after this one is sensors. So make sure if you want to find out a little bit more about sensors in particular, then click up here and you're going to be able to go through to another video of me talking about sensors. I am parched!